Hello and welcome to the Planet Elevate AI podcast, where we explore the fascinating world of artificial intelligence, innovation, and the future of technology. I'm your host, Imran Kadri, and every episode we bring you insights from global leaders who are shaping the next era of AI. Today, we have a very special guest joining us. Gautam Hazari, Chief Technology Officer at Sekura.ID. Now, if you spend any time exploring the future of digital identity or the humanization of technology, you've probably come across Gautam's work. He's a futurist, a visionary technologist, and a passionate advocate for making the digital world safer. With 25 plus years of experience in the telecom and identity space, Gautam has become instrumental in driving innovations like mobile authentication and network APIs that have transformed how billions of people interact online. He's also a TEDx speaker, a multi-patent holder, and a leader whose influence has shaped the very foundations of secure digital ecosystems. Gautam, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Imran. Thanks for having me here and thanks for the introduction.
Brilliant. Really great to have you here today. Before we get into the AI and ethics, let's start with your journey, Gautam, if that's okay. What's inspired you to dedicate your career to digital identity and the humanization of technology?
I would say it is by chance, right? It's never planned for it. That's how life works, right? You don't plan for it. So I was not in the telecom space, not in the identity space as well. So I was during the 99 or so, I was busy solving the Y2K problems. Many of the young listeners probably will not even remember it, but Y2K was a problem and apparently was a problem. Your Y2K is year 2000 because everyone thought, price will fall, banks will, fall through. The clock takes from 1999 to 2000, right? So I was actually working in Sydney at that time, some bank solving it, right? And then the clock changed, nothing happened, right? So yeah, but the journey was interesting. Then my next assignment was for a digital transformation journey with Vodafone in the UK. And then that was the start of the kind of internet journey for the telecom space. And I was new to telecom, right? I was not from the telecom space. Of course, I'm from the computing background. That's my education. But what I saw as a fresher actually made me started to think that there are some assets within the telecom space which is lying there and it's a bit underutilized. And one of the thing was identity, right? I'll just quickly share what do I mean by that, right? In the internet, let's face it, I would say the internet was never designed to identify humans, me and you and the audience, right? It was designed to identify computers, and that's why there are IP addresses. Fortunately or unfortunately, we humans do not have IP addresses yet, right? Who knows what Mr. Musk will do when he will plant chips here. But anyway, so for now, we don't have IP addresses. So the internet never knew how to identify you or me. It still doesn't know how to identify you and me, right? So that's why we created some, I would say workarounds to solve that problem. But there's still workaround. They were workaround. Internet doesn't know how to identify me and you, right? We don't really think about it because there is an inertia there. And we started with password, which I hate so much that I had to do the TEDx talk about password. But anyways, that's later. So the way the internet works in any of the services, and that will lead to the AI discussions later, is we cannot trust anyone in the internet, right? There is no trust and it's based on a challenge, right? So let's just think of an example. Let's say if you are selling something on the internet on any of the services, let's say eBay or anyone, right? And I want to pay you. The service will say, no, you cannot pay, which is counterintuitive, right? In a business, if someone wants to pay, you take the payment first, then talk. But here you say, no, you cannot pay. First, you prove you are Gautam. And how do I prove? I will be challenged with a password prompt, that famous text box with password prompt saying that, hey, if you can share Gautam's password, then you're Gautam. Or there's an OTP that's sent to your phone. If you can prove that you have received that OTP to Gautam's phone, then you're Gautam. Or scan your face, put your fingerprint. If you can prove that this is the same face that Gautam registered, then you're Gautam, right? what the digital world works. But we almost forgot that there is a service that we are using since 1991, which works very differently. And this is also a parallel internet, right? So let's say you're calling me, and then my mobile operator is basically routing that call to me. It doesn't challenge me. I mean, if let's say my mobile operator says, you cannot take that call from Imran until you prove you're Gautam, that will not just be funny, that will be unacceptable.
Mhm.
So the way the mobile operators work is it just knows that the phone that I'm holding is nothing wrong in it, right? It doesn't really know that it's Gautam or not, but it knows that maybe nothing is wrong in there, right? So it identifies me as a human without challenging me. And that was refreshing for me. So that, that's a solution or a partial solution to this identity crisis of the internet, which doesn't know how to identify me. Why do we just keep it within the telecom world? And how do they do it? They do it through this humble device SIM, which we carry in our pocket all the time. And we are doing it for the last 30 years, right? And I keep reminding myself and everyone that I in SIM stands for identity. It's subscriber identity module. The main purpose, or in most cases, sole purpose of that SIM is to identify using cryptography, right? This is where my journey started. And, there is a solution there, or one of the solutions there. Why do we just keep it within the telecom space? Why don't we expose it outside and try to solve the identity crisis of the internet? This is where my journey into the identity started, and in relation to the mobile telecom ecosystem.
Brilliant. Great to hear that, Gautam, from you. And it just gives our listeners a bit of context as to the angle that you're approaching today's topic, which is fantastic. You've had a TEDx talk on creating a passwordless world, which has inspired so many people. What's the next big vision you're working towards?
So, first of all, thanks for mentioning TEDx. And it was a transformational journey, right? During the preparation, there's a lot of preparation that needs to happen. You need to basically put in all your vision into 18 minutes. And it's hard, right? Because something you're passionate about, you can talk for days. I can talk for days, constantly on this. And you need to do it in 18 minutes without diluting the passion, diluting the message, right? So that was hard. But more importantly, after the talk, there are so many, you know, individuals reached out. Many of them probably I'll never meet, but with their stories, good, bad, ugly, majority of those were not really good stories, right? Because there is a lot many things happen. So anyway, so that has motivated me even further to drive, from my experience, my whatever I'm doing in technology, to try to solve this problem, the identity crisis. Password is the first one, not the last one, right? So this entire problem needs to be solved, and in a humanized way, because that's most important, right? The next thing is contextual, right? This AI revolution is challenging identity, right? The way I see that is, the major problem of AI is identity. You pick any other things. Deepfake is an identity problem. If you really know that it's not me who is actually in the video, right? Me as an identity. It's not the organic me. It's not the digital me. In that case, you solve that problem. How do you do that? So I see these, let's say, new world as an identity challenge. And at the same time, I work a lot in helping the businesses. I mean, my company, Sekura.ID, and now we are part of a bigger organization, XConnect, which is Somo's group company. Our main business is to help the businesses from protection from fraud, identity verification, and so on. And in this new age, this post generative AI, in this agentic AI world, the fraudsters have got access to the same tools that the other businesses have, right? So that has created a much, much bigger problem in an accelerated way. So right now, that's what I am focusing, and I am, to again solve. It never stops, right? So yes, I started to talk about passwords, but that's not the end goal, right? We need to constantly be, kind of moving, trying to be ahead of the fraudsters and solve it. And by the way, I mentioned AI. I mean, for me, AI is not new. right? The first time I used AI was 1999. It was not for telecom. It was not even for identity, not for fraud management. It was some other purpose that I was doing for mostly for extracting out information from legal documents. And I didn't succeed. At that time, the market was not ready. I saw the AI winter at that time. I was using tools like Prolog, which some of the audience might know. The other one was Omnimark, which I have seen that many don't even know, right? And then there was not enough data. The compute was not appropriate. And basically, there were not many libraries. Yes, the algorithms were there, but not many libraries there. So anyway, so my journey in AI started way back. And then in between as well, within the telecoms, I used AI. And now I am using heavily, and my team and my organization is using AI heavily to solve again this identity crisis of the internet and protect the businesses and more importantly the humans from.
Excellent. Really, really good insight into your upcoming goals and aspirations there, and looking to solve a worldwide problem. So that leads us nicely into today's main topic. So let's dive straight in. The future of ethical AI in small businesses. AI offers huge opportunities for small businesses, but there's always a fine line between innovation and intrusion, which you referenced. How should small businesses approach AI implementation responsibly, especially when it comes to earning customer trust?
Thanks, Imran. That's a very critical things that we should discuss, and there is a lot of discussion happening there as well. If it is okay with you, I want to step back, right, to put the context here, right? Why you mentioned small businesses in the context of small businesses, and also I think in general. The way I see that is the world, rather the digital world, where the small businesses are participating heavily, and that inclusion is extremely important. And part of my work for humanization of technology is inclusivity, right? That's critical. And this is one of the reasons that I am so much passionate about this sim because of inclusivity, right? Let me just kind of, digress for a
Sure,
minute and then I'll come back.
that's fine. Yeah.
You know what, there are a lot many different, let's say, solutions to solve these, let's say, identity crisis. And in a similar conceptual way, what does that mean is cryptography or the mathematics behind cryptography is one of the solutions, not the only one, but one of the solutions, right? There are different ways to basically manage the cryptography, the keys, the processes. Mobile devices, one, there are a lot many things happening by the OEMs of the mobile devices. There are external devices as well. SIM as well, right? SIM is a cryptographic device, as I said. Let's not get into the details. But why I'm so passionate about SIM is the inclusivity. What do I mean by that? Is let's say if I take let's say iPhone 16, right? It's a brilliant device, very, very secure. There's a hardware chip, there's a keychain, which is managing all the cryptography, right? No doubt about that. There are lot many users around the world who cannot afford an iPhone 16. They can only afford a maybe $10 smartphone or feature phone, right? It will be unfair not to include them in this security and then identity umbrella, right? Where they are identified securely as well, right? And if I cannot afford that high-end smartphone, my my transactions, my journey, my world in the digital space is not secure. That's unfair. That's not inclusive, right? But if you use that SIM, the SIM doesn't care if it is in a iPhone 16 or in that $10 phone. It will provide the exact same inclusive security and the solution. So that's
Okay.
why I'm quite passionate. Now, coming back to here is, you mentioned the small businesses. That inclusive is it's important. Whatever we do needs to include them, right? Cannot be multiple solutions. Oh, this is for big businesses, this is for small businesses. Now, as I was saying, the context, the way, what I see the world right now, and it's not new. It has been happening for last, I would say, almost a decade. The world has been revolving around three A's. It's apps, applications, APIs,
Mhm.
and AI,
Okay.
right? And probably it's much more relevant for small businesses because that's how they were doing. Let me say, what do I mean by that? And when I say AI, it's not the agentic AI or the physical AI or even the generative AI I'm talking about, right? It's the kind of what I call the predictive AI, where the AI was mostly used for example, regression, predicting the cause, predicting, any sort of next actions, etc. Right? And interestingly, out of these three A's, AI is the oldest one. It's kind of counterintuitive. AI existed way before the apps and APIs came in. But anyways, we may talk about that later. So let me give an example. Let's say if there is not really an example of a very small business, but let's say if it's a local taxi provider business and they want to get into this digital space, because that's how we book taxis these days, right? We don't really earlier we used to go to that taxi stop and get the taxis. Now in the digital space, everyone books from, let's say, an app. Let's say this small taxi business as an app. So the way it will work is there is of course an app. App is the entry point for we humans into that digital space, right? Which is also not ideal, but that's what it is, what it has been. Then this small business taxi provider, they cannot do everything, right? Because they need to work with whatever is available. So what they will do is, let's say if I, as a user, want to go from my place to my friend's place, so point A to point B, right? So then this taxi provider needs to have some sort of access of maps, digital maps, right? Of course, that's not a business of this small taxi provider. They will need to use it from somewhere else. Let's say Google Maps or some other maps provider, right? How will they access it? They will access it through APIs. This is where APIs becomes the, kind of lifeline of all these small business providers. So they will access, let's say, the maps through that so that they can actually plot the 2 points in there. Then they will calculate the distance. And then they will need some sort of predictive AI to basically get the pricing based on the different, let's say, routes. And then if they want, they can do such pricing as well, which is probably not very ethical, I would say. Like if the demand is high, I mean, you can argue both ways, right? So anyway, some sort of predictive AI to see that, hey, based on the traffic, based on the demand, based on the path, based on the distance, what should be the price, right? That's how it works. This is why I said most of these digital businesses were revolving around these three. What has this new AI done? We call all these AI, but they're not the same AI, right? Predictive AI then moved into some form of, let's say, other things happened as well, but the next milestone was this generative AI, right? Then it moved into agentic AI. So these three A's are getting, I would say, converged into one by this fourth A, which is this agentic AI. And that's where the small businesses will have impact, good and not so good ways as well. What does that mean by that is we may not need an app, right? And it's already happening. It's not happening at mass scale. So since 2023, any of us remembers there were some devices that were announced during the CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. AI pin was announced, which didn't work that well. The other one was Rabbit Hour one, where there are no apps, right? And you basically ask the tool or the device that, hey, I want to go from my place. Can I get a taxi to go to my friend's place? Right. And then, so there is no app, right? So the app is gone. And then APIs may still be there, but in a slightly different way, which will use maps, etc. And it will use some sort of other AI to do it, right? So that's what is happening. And that's critical for the small businesses and also any business in the digital space to kind of look into. And you mentioned the ethical practice. That's it's a difficult bit, right? I think it's much broader. We cannot just partition it into ethics. It's regulatory, which is interesting, ethics. Combine all this, I call it the mindful AI, right? So we need to do the right thing as a business and also as a kind of community, right? One other thing also I'll mention, which is contextual, and we need to be aware of that as small businesses as well, is I said those 3 years where the digital world is evolving. The other thing that I see, the world has been revolving between two paradoxes. One is the Moravec's paradox, it's called. I'll come to that. The other one is Polanyi's paradox. Moravec's paradox said that there are things which are difficult for humans and there are things which are easier for machines, computers, phones, any of those things, right? And it's the reverse as well. There are things which are difficult for computers, and there are things, and the same things are easier for humans, right? So if I have to, as a human, if I have to calculate, of a 103 digit number, the cube root of that will be very difficult for me. For the computer, it's microseconds of job, right? That's the first category. The second category was language. Language is very, natural language is very easy for us as human. That's the critical tool that has made the Homo sapiens as the top of the food chain, right? We are not the strongest, but we are at the top of the food chain because of one. Language is one of the things, natural language, right? Language has been very difficult for computers because, again, without going into much detail, we know the ambiguities in language, right? Language needs a lot of kind of thought processing as well. On the other side, the Polanyi's paradox basically said that we know more than we can express. And then again, it's probably talking about language, right? There's a lot many things happening here, but we cannot express. If we cannot express, the machines will not understand. The programmer cannot code if you cannot express it, right? Let's say the applications that the small businesses are doing cannot create that because we cannot express. And again, there is a convergence happening here. Through this generative AI, now we are moving from predictive to generative AI after this phenomena happened in November 2023, ChatGPT, right, and beyond. That language barrier is broken. So Moravec's paradox is been shattered. These machines now understand our language, right? Polanyi's paradox, we said we know more than we express. Now we can. We don't need to use a language, a natural language, to interact with these machines. You just talk through. And that has impact, I would say severe impact for these, let's say, small businesses. And then this mindfulness needs to be, so the impact is you cannot just rely on apps, right? Because that's where they need to move into in this AI space, where probably, if I have to predict, in few years time, there will not be any apps. Why will you need it? The apps are probably a forceful thing from the businesses towards the humans, right? In one of the event I was speaking, I asked the audience, I said that I'm going to ask, which may sound like an absurd question, but let me ask that anyway. What is the shape of the organic world? There isn't any shape. You can say that three-dimensional, but there is no shape, right? You look around, there's no shape. There are lots of different shapes, three-dimensional maybe. Now, if we ask the same question for the digital world, what is the shape for the digital world? Is there a shape? Yes, there is. The shape of the digital world is rectangular. Why do I say that? If you see right now, wherever any of us are watching this, we are watching this through a screen, which is mostly rectangular. You're watching it from a phone or a laptop, right? It's rectangular. So we have forced the shape of a world due to, I would say, technological limitation. So apps were that shape through which we were entering the digital world. And apps were translating our, I would say, human capabilities into the digital world where these small, large businesses were working through. And why was that happening? Because there were two different, let's say, languages, right? We think work in natural language, the apps work in bits and etc. That's been broken. And that has severe impact. In few years' time, probably, we will not need that rectangular shape. We'll just talk. That's already happening. You talk through any of this application. And here we talked about ethical, I call it mindful AI, that's critical, right? And some of the usual stuff where there's a lot of work happening. For example, you cannot introduce bias in there, right? In the, let's say, language processing. You cannot, let's say, use when you are pulling in data, for example, through the APIs behind the scene. You should look for all the, let's say, data privacy elements that you are actually considering if I am the human user, you're considering all the privacy, because data is the fuel for all the AI processing that's happening. If you're using any of the predictive AI, be mindful that that predictive AI shouldn't be biased towards anyways, right? Any direction, biased towards, of course, sustainability is important from business perspective, but it shouldn't be driven by greed, right? That you want to make profit because, there is a problem happening on one of the motorways. So, let's be greedy. Let's start to surge the price because we want to make more profit, right? Those type of things. And these are difficult and critical, right? And these are, as you said, these are more ethical, right? And practices. This cannot be enforced through regulation in many of the cases, especially in this AI world. I'll pause there, Imran. I probably digressed a
No,
bit from here and there, but yeah.
you've talked about regulation there towards the end of that segment, which is great, which was the next subtopic in our conversation today. So, how do you see AI governance evolving over the next 5 years? I know you've given us a bit of a context there, but particularly for startups and small medium enterprises, as well as big corporates and organizations trying to innovate responsibly, what do you think is going to happen in the next 5 years? What is the outlook from your point of view?
5 years is a very long time these days, isn't it? With the
It
speed
is,
things are moving,
yes.
I don't think anyone can predict what's going to happen in 5 years, right? But at the moment, if you see, and then if you see the trajectory for the last 2 years, because in the last 2 years, things have moved drastically, right? From, let's say, from the big milestone of launch of ChatGPT to where we are
Yeah.
now. It's from all perspective, let's say regulatory
Things are
perspectives.
accelerating. That's right. Yeah. It does feel like
Absolutely.
that. Yeah. Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's every week is different. Every week we see, let's say, the thought process almost shatters, right? From which has impact on, which will have impact on regulation and business practices as well. Regulatory wise, there is no homogeneity right now, right? I hope in 5 years' time there will be some sort of, because that creates problem for small businesses, right? If you want to expand and if you're going to different geographies and then the homogeneity is not there, and then that's not a criticism, right? It will happen. It's very difficult. The regulations are slow for a reason, right? You need to think through lot many things, software things as well, right? So right now it varies in a broad spectrum from, for example, the UKI Act or regulation. It's pretty strict, right? Although there are a lot many kind of things which are unclear. So, for example, high risk AI applications use cases, they're almost not allowed, right? But which are high risks, right? How do you identify them? Because of the acceleration that you mentioned as well, they will keep changing, right? You never know. This is a different world we are in, right? This is not a tool that you can regulate, right? So someone sitting in a garage, one person, without any bad intention, they can build something which will have implications, right? So in that case, is that, how do you actually identify that as a high risk use case? It's difficult, if not impossible. It's almost impossible right now. And also the other extreme is pro innovation, like in UK and many other countries, UK, India, they have taken. The other extreme is, let's not do a regulation which is centralized, because different verticals, different use cases, different business sectors, they have different sensitivities. So the financial sector will have different sensitivities to, for example, the gaming sectors, right? Or the taxi example that we said, right? The, let's say, impact that it can have from, let's say, a bad practice perspective are different, right? The financial ones are really most critical. Maybe other areas like, for example, the Internet of Things, the machines, they're probably even more critical, right? So if there is a connected pacemaker, which I talked about in my TEDx thing as well, if it is using some form of AI, it's a life and death thing, right? Then the financial ones as well. So that's another paradigm of regulation which UK has taken, where it is kind of sector specific. Each sector needs to decide, um, how it will be regulated. Now, coming back to what you were asking in 5 years' time, I think we will have to see. One of the things that I am predicting is there will be some sort of synergies happening, which already started. UK probably was a leader there with the November, right? November 2023, the AI summit, then followed up by the one in Paris, where the leaders, not just from the technology sector, from the regulators, political sectors, state representatives, they're all coming together, because this is a societal thing. It's not just, implementing another technology, because it will have impact on everything that we do or we will be doing. They're coming together, sharing thoughts. So I think the only soft thing that I can predict in 5 years' time, there will be some sort of synergies, learning from each other. Innovation shouldn't stop. Being a futurist, I don't want that the regulation said, no, you cannot do it. Let's just stop it. And then let's just figure out how do we restart it. I don't think that will help. And that's not going to work as well, because someone might still do it and no one will know, right? As we said, all
Sure.
you need is a laptop and an internet connection. And then there are a lot many open source tools you can download and start to do stuff.
Great. This is really good insight, Gautam. And my understanding is obviously there are some issues that very hot issues, such as privacy, which we've referenced, fraud prevention and data security, as well as defense and war. And I think regulations around those areas needs to be looked at, I would imagine. And we probably will see movement there very, very soon. But very good. Thank you for that. AI is revolutionizing sales and marketing from hyper personalization to predictive analysis. But where should companies draw the line to ensure that AI driven strategies don't cross ethical boundaries, especially when it comes to sales and marketing?
If we are using, so it needs to, I think every business needs to establish some sort of, I don't want to use the word guardrails because that's been kind of overutilized and I think the idea is getting diluted. Some sort of practice scripts there, right? As you said, drawing the boundary. First thing is, yes, everyone should use AI, right? Even in sales and marketing, because it's a tool, right? As long as you are using it as a tool, agentic AI, of course, is challenging that. It's not a tool, right? It's taking decisions on its own. I think that's on something that's outside that borderline. If you have to start saying that we are not there yet where we give complete agency to this AIs, right? That should be within that guardrail, because then what happens is basically for sales, especially, right? The objective is revenue, gross margin, EBITDA, right? If that is an objective given to an AI agent, in that case, it may not understand human values, right? If that objective is there, has been there for the humans doing sales as well, right? But again, it's a human, right? Human first, then a salesperson second, right? There will always be human values. They would not ideally want to harm other humans financially or otherwise, right? The AI agents, what will it do if you just give that objective? It can create subtasks, sub-objectives, which may not align with human values, right? We don't know. So in that case, if one thing that we will have to keep outside that boundary line is that let's not give these AI, whatever you call it, models as agency and just give this high level to, hey, just increase the revenue, increase the gross margin. Because in that case, and it's been proven, it's not just theory. We have so many examples where these models, these AI models, have been deceiving, lying, doing bad stuff in a controlled environment, right? If we do that in an open environment, you never know what's going to happen. Maybe one thing we can talk, if we have time, about, you mentioned fraud, right? How this, let's say, fraud is evolving in this AI space. And it's not nice, but it's a reality as well, right? But coming back to your sales question, I think that's something that we should ensure that it's not happening. But the sales organization, salesperson, they should definitely use, let's say, AI as a tool, for example, to generate the list of prospects, right, based on certain criteria. Of course, that's tool. You're not giving the agency to the, let's say, AI model. You're using it as a tool. So you can do it yourself as well as a salesperson. That will take time. You want more efficiency? Use an AI model to generate that sales prospect based on the criteria. So that could be a broad boundary. I know it's not a crisp boundary because that's difficult, but that's what I would say should be should be some sort of criteria. Don't give agency yet, although we are already in the agentic AI world, but let's try to, be more, I would say, humans.
Sure. Great to hear that. Just like similarly, other guests we've had on the show, Gautam, they've all felt the need and the importance to have the human touch as part of the AI evolution. Fantastic. So, briefly, finally, for tech leaders listening to this episode, what practical advice would you give them to future proof their organizations and stay human centric while adopting AI at a scale?
So what I would suggest is whatever we do. So AI is here. It's going to stay. I mean, there are discussions happening on it's a bubble, it will burst. Yes, there are some hypes there, right? There are big numbers being thrown, but that happens with any technology, right? But it's here. It will it will stay. So let's just accept that as leaders, right? What does that mean is let's not try to reject that AI is another hype, another bubble, it will burst. Uh, let's let's try to explore. Let's try to accept where it can add efficiencies into the business, where it can help driving the business, and keep humanization as part of any of the things, especially in technology, right? So at the end of every decision, there is always a human. Now the decisions are taken or at least complemented by these AI models. Let's keep humanization there as well. I know it's hard, but let's keep humanization there in the decisioning process, even if it is done by AI. And also when, we validate the decisions, let's keep humanization in there. And as we discuss this ethical, mindful AI, that should be an uncompromisable, let's say, principle for anything, right? Let's not give complete agency to these models. It's tempting to think that I'm sure audience and you, Imran, have heard about this thing. Okay, maybe, sometime later, there will be organizations, there will not be any humans, it will just be AI agents. Right? Technically, that sounds like a great idea, but as a society of humans, that may not be, right? Because in that case, we have no idea what alignment their objectives will be, right? So let's avoid those kind of, let's say, more, let's say, futuristic things for now until we know how the things evolve and we have enough guardrails in there. There are good things happening in working towards making sure that it is safe, the privacy is taken care of. So until we reach there, and that's slow, right? The speed and the acceleration towards moving to the next step on this AI journey is faster than making sure that there are enough guardrails. That's slower. So in that case, let's just accept that. But let's also accept that AI is here, AI is going to stay. Let's use that in the businesses.
Fantastic. Great to hear that, Gautam. Thank you so much there. That takes us to the last part of the conversation, which is the quick-fire wrap-up round. So these are just 3 questions we've had from the audience already. Just want straightforward, short answers, if that's okay. Responses, Gautam, if that's okay. If you weren't in tech, what career would you have chosen?
Music, maybe,
Okay,
because
why music? Yeah.
multiple things. I am a musician by heart, not by profession. I play around 11 musical instruments. And there is another angle to that as well. I feel because from my education perspective, I studied quantum mechanics as well, right, which is heavily based on maths. I feel, I don't remember who said, maybe it was Leibniz who said that music is about counting without counting, right? So in music, there's a lot of kind of mathematical things there, right? When I was studying quantum mechanics, I was actually, doing lots of interesting stuff related to music there as well. So that has stayed with me. So maybe that's what I would love to do.
Great. What's one futuristic technology you think will be mainstream by 2030?
Again, as we said earlier as well, 2030 is 5 years away, right? Who knows, right? What will happen. But what I can definitely predict is probably this new technology, whatever it is, may not be purely created by humans or Homo sapiens. It will be created by this new digital species, if you can call it, which is this AI, right? Uh, because I think right now, these, let's say, frontier models, they have an IQ of 148 or 150, different reports say differently, right? Which is beyond average human anyway. An average human has got 100 and I think the IQ, right, is beyond that, right? What it will bring in, who knows? One of the technology personally, I think will be very, very useful alongside AI is gene editing, CRISPR, which has been there for very long, but due to, again, these ethical things, we have not used it because I think there are some of in the medical world, for example, there are certain diseases which are not really traditional diseases like cancer. I have some personal stories on that. I have been still working through my I'm not a medical expert, but whatever I can do from my technical perspective, I try to do. I'm involved in many of the open source work in cancer detection due to some personal stories I had. I think CRISPR, which is gene editing, alongside AI helping out, and for example, what Google did with AlphaFold, getting all the protein structures created. I think a combination of all will be a great technology for humanity as for the species, longevity, solving some of the unsolved medical problems, including cancer. I think that's something that I hope that will be there. Not one technology, a combination of technologies.
Yeah, that's a very good, very positive thought there, Gautam. Thank you for that. And finally, in terms of a productivity hack, what fuels you? Is it coffee? Is it tea? Is it something else?
I would like to think coffee. I have heavy reliance on coffee. I want to reduce it. But beyond that, I think it's curiosity and positive outlook towards the future. I think for me, that I have seen as a productivity hack. If we are curious about something happened in the past, why did it happen? What will future bring in? What can we learn from whatever happened there, right? And then keeping humanization at the center of it. I think that, at least for me, has been a big product, and it helps, having that positive outlook and then being curious. If you combine these two, that drives, that motivates, and then there are, it basically fuels the business as well. Then you can drive the business, your own organization, your own team towards the future in a positive way.
Great. It's been a fantastic discussion today, Gautam. Really appreciate your time to come to the Planet Elevate AI podcast. So thank you so much for joining us today. Your insights into ethical AI, digital identity, and future innovation have been incredibly valuable. It's inspiring to see you shaping technology while keeping the human element at the center. For our listeners, don't forget to check out Sekura.ID and Gautam's TEDx talk. I'll leave links in the show notes below. This is Imran Kadri with Gautam Hazari. You've been listening to the Planet Elevate AI podcast. Until next time, elevating you to success. Thank you.